can't hear us?
yet.
Okay.
Ugh, I'm not muted. Oh no. Okay, now I am. All right. Okay, get comfortable.
The best part about the show is that I get to charge my Chromebook every week.
Okay, we might be live.
Looks like it.
Very glary. Yeah, and we're just different today.
It is different. I don't like it.
Ah, well, we'll figure it out. Or not. We won't figure it out. It'll be fine. I lost my pen. Okay. Are you ready, kids?
Yeah.
Aye,
Cool.
Captain.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't think I've lost.
In a long
In a long
time.
time. Welcome to Books We've Never Read.
Except for those we have.
I'm Jason.
I'm Nicole. And this is episode 32.
What does winning even mean?
Just that you start. You don't know what you're doing. This is episode 32 of Books We Never Read. We are going to talk about Children of Time chapters 1 through 3.8. So before we get started, please make sure this is the video that you intend to be watching because we talk about the reading as if you have already read it. So spoilers abound. And yeah, we're so excited to have you here. So far, what a great book!
Yeah, we're really enjoying it. Let's see, so we announced it last week, and I think I finished it on Monday. Maybe
I just
Tuesday.
finished last night.
Yeah.
I was way behind, but not because I didn't want to read it. I just didn't have capacity for it this week.
Yeah. It's really good to be back in sci-fi, just because that's like home turf for me, right? I really enjoy it. And one thing that, pretty much the only thing that we've talked about this book so far is that I really can't put a pin on why I like this, right? Like with Three Body and with even the other book about time or children. Childhood's End, yeah. Both of those like had a specific thing that I felt like they were trying to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they were like, think about this,
Mm-hmm.
and this is more like a story.
Yeah.
You know, and it has like a very the book series I compared it to was like Redwall, where it's just like a story, but it has animals in it as like the protagonist. But maybe like a more common thing would be like Watership Down, even though that's like not quite the same kind of idea, you know. You never read Watership Down? Oh my god, okay. Stories about animals, right? But,
Who doesn't like giant spiders with gender roles?
yes. Well, let's go in.
Yeah, and I really like the chapters with Portia and Bianca.
Yeah.
And when it flips back to the Gilgamesh, I end up having to start that chapter over because for about 10 minutes I was still thinking about Portia and Bianca.
Yeah.
And so I like that we're getting these two stories of time and change and evolution in tandem. You know, we're getting both of these together. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
And we see some coordinating pieces between the two storylines.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a lot of fun. And, you know, going into this book, I had no idea what it would be about, and I still don't know what it's about, but I'm following so far.
Right.
You know, but this not being on my radar at all,
yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. The author is really talented at building characters or situations that we care about. Like characters I care about, the spiders.
Yeah.
Surprise. And then situations I care about, you know, what's going on board the Gilgamesh. I'm not particularly attached to the people on the Gilgamesh.
Yeah, I'm way more attached to the spiders.
Yeah, but I am interested in, you know, how are they going to navigate this problem? Right. The problem both of needing to approach the planet and the fact that there's the people who have gone rogue and taken over the ship. Right.
I mean, you finished, right?
Yeah.
Because both those problems are basically solved by the end.
They're about to land, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Well, okay. You might have not gone far enough.
Yes.
Okay. Did you get to the ant battle?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so they make it, right? Like that's what that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. They're
yeah.
like, there's light in the sky.
Yeah.
And the ground shook.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
got to
yeah.
be what it is, right?
Yeah.
But let's go back to Peggy's thing though about the gender roles though, because that is one of my favorite parts because this is not the first sci-fi book I've ever read where it's like, hey, what if aliens were bugs, you know? But it is the first one that's really dived into like what a culture could be like.
Mm-hmm.
And so the one that immediately springs to mind for me of like what would a bug society look like is really Ender's Game, which doesn't really get into the culture of I can't remember what they call them, but like the bug people that
Mm-hmm.
are the Formics. But they have that idea, and there's a queen, and there's a swarm, and like so you have like the basics of it. But not only are the spiders cool with like their female hierarchy, and like sometimes they eat the male, and like that's okay, right? Because they're that close to their like animal nature still. But also like the way that an ant culture is described is fascinating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they are the hive is intelligent, not in each individual ant, and going into their chemical mode of communication and everything is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did do just a quick Google, but the show was about to start, so I didn't have time to really read about it. But I wanted to know about Adrian Tchaikovsky's knowledge of biology and stuff like that. Just I just want to know, like, I want to hear from a scientist, you know, and I always want to hear from a scientist in sci-fi. Like, okay, so here's this idea, you know, how probable do you think this is, you know? But I didn't make it very far.
Well, because this is all being like done by a virus, it can be as improbable as you like, right?
I love that explanation as well. Like, you know, her barrel of monkeys and the virus, and the monkeys didn't make it, but the virus did.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. And also that the author keeps explaining along the way the role that the virus has played in the development of the spider society.
There is no reason we could have the same story without the understanding aspect, right? Isn't that what they call it, the understanding?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You could have the same story because like you could just have these things evolving and figuring it out without like these shared memories. But I really like that part because it makes Portia feel like Portia, right? Like she is the same Portia that we have seen 3 times now, but even though it's not really her. And it makes for some like interesting problems where like she left to go look for the ant colony, but she hadn't like laid her last eggs. So it's almost like you didn't back up your phone, right? Like
I really felt something for her there, that she knew she'd likely die in this battle, and she had so many memories built up, and she hadn't laid those eggs yet.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh crap.
Yeah.
You know, time. How long does it take to lay an egg? I don't know.
Yeah.
So this is a process.
So, but here's one interesting thing, right? It's like we are following Portia, right? Who is the daughter of Portia? Who's the daughter of Portia? And it makes you feel like that's still Portia.
Yeah.
But the current Portia that we are talking to, that we're following, there are probably 20 other things, 20 other spiders out there that think of themselves as Portians, right? Because they're all part of the same clutch or whatever. And so that's kind of interesting, right? They identify themselves with the like nest that they came from because they don't have like families or whatever, instead of identifying themselves with the things that have their shared genetic memories, which I think is kind of odd because that would be, I think, the normal way to do it, right? Like, oh, we're all Portians, all right, we're a family.
But then there's not like room for all those Portias, right? Like that's too many people vying, or too many spiders vying for power and dominance.
Maybe, I don't know.
So when they spread out, if each nest gets a Portia and each nest gets a Bianca.
Yeah. Well, so I don't think that's the case though.
Well, not necessarily, but like
there must be some other things in her like house, right? That house. I know you don't like that. that are also Portias, right? And we're just not really discussing it because all of past Portia's eggs went into the same clutch.
Right. Yeah. Just some like literary stuff. So as soon as I learned that the warrior's name was Portia, it made me think of Julius Caesar. The story, but mostly I know about Julius Caesar through Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Portia was Brutus's wife. Brutus is the one, et tu brute. He's the one who kills Caesar or whatever, and he was holding all these secrets. Oh yeah, good point, Peggy. We'll come back to that. And Portia was Brutus's wife, and Portia was the daughter of a warrior, and she had to prove herself to Brutus because he didn't want to, burden her with knowledge of the inner workings of what was going on. And so she proved herself as being strong and capable by stabbing herself in the leg in the middle of a conversation with Brutus to show, like, I'm bleeding out and I'm not crying. You can trust me with your secrets, you know. And then when she learned of Brutus's death, even though it wasn't quite true, she swallowed burning coals to kill herself. I mean, just to keep her from being, taken prisoner.
Yeah.
To keep from becoming a slave. But again, just another, I mean, how horrible. But she was so strong and so determined. She had a very clear path of, here are the appropriate things to do and the appropriate actions in each case, And I thought that was kind of interesting because Portia's the warrior here.
Yeah.
And then Bianca, of course, I immediately, since I was already kind of thinking of literary names, I thought of the Biancas in Shakespeare as well. And Bianca means like white and pure, innocent. And so, but I don't really see how that plays a role here. But Peggy mentioned Bianca started out as a sidekick and now is a respected scientist.
A wizard.
Yeah, I mean, and like, I loved this interaction between Portia and Bianca, the most recent one where Bianca's laying out this plan of, well, here, you're going to have to go into the middle of this thing. But like, here, look at my workshop. I have all these men working and I'm a higher thinker than everyone else is. I really enjoyed all of that.
We get a lot of development between the Bianca characters, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really cool because Portia is basically the same. She doesn't change all that much. Her understandings change and her like intellectual abilities change, but her spirit remains the same. So, yeah. Let's see what I'm looking for some of my notes. One of my things, the thing that I think is most attractive to me, and that takes me back a little bit to some three-body stuff, is the all of these different insects worship like the signal, right? And they don't really understand what the signal is, but they see this pattern and they know that it's important, and they recognize that it is tied in with the star. And that reminds me of some of the conversations about three-body where like you see a pattern, but like we made that pattern, right? Or that something could be guiding these other things, or like maybe that's only the pattern here in this tiny corner of the universe or whatever. And something that is as mundane as it's not really the distress signal, it's the signal.
The math, right?
It's the math, right? So it's.
She's like, and we solved it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we just don't know what it is, right? But something that's just that, us trying to figure out if the things are ready, and it becomes this whole religion and culture for them, and like something like that could absolutely happen to us, and there's no way to tell that something like that has not happened to us. Like I think it's highly unlikely, but it's possible. So.
Yeah. What is the crystal that Portia stole?
It's just it's an antenna, right? Like that's basically what it is. It's a natural antenna. So some crystals will resonate with radio waves or sound waves or whatever, right? Like or in the same way that like a wire will be able to pick up a transmission. That's what they're doing. They don't have a wire, so
right.
It's just an antenna.
The eye of the god, and I was just wondering like what that was.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the ants found it, right?
Yeah.
Somehow the ants found it out, so.
I love that that end of that chapter though. That Portia stole the eye of the god, and it's a story that'll live on.
Yeah.
For the generations. That was a really just beautifully worded part. Speaking of like the generations, right? So the ship that the humans are on, whatever humans they are, because Dr. Kern does not acknowledge them as being the same kind of humans.
Well, Dr. Kern didn't acknowledge the people she was with. Dr. Kern is really something.
Yeah, she is really something. But I thought it was interesting that they named the ship the Gilgamesh. And with that being one of the first things that like popped off in the book, got me thinking about, okay, so what does that mean? And, how does that relate to Gilgamesh and how does that relate to this story? And so, just fun fact, Gilgamesh was a king of ancient Uruk, which is Iraq, that region now, ancient Mesopotamia. And what's so cool about it is the story of Gilgamesh is one of the oldest stories that we have. And so there's lots of use of Gilgamesh and other pieces of literature to show themes of legacy, or themes of like preserving culture. Because as Mesopotamia was overtaken by the Babylonians and the Assyrians, while the land was being overtaken, the culture and the stories and those kinds of things, the artwork was all being maintained and preserved and added to. And so the story of Gilgamesh, what we have of it now, the pieces we have of it now, it's not all original ancient Mesopotamian. It's not all the original story. It has little added pieces from all the different civilizations that overtook that region. And so you have this like mixed match of stories. But what you do really have is this legacy, this piece of the original that survives throughout, the eons of other people. And so, we see the Gilgamesh lasting up in space for like 2,000 years, like while they're just sleeping through it and waking up and handling the situation. But we know where this is going, and that there's going to be a meeting between the civilization already on this planet and the visitors to this planet. And so I wonder kind of what role that's going to play, and how are we going to see legacy, right? Like Dr. Kern talked about that. Like this was her legacy. Right. Kern's world was her legacy. These were her monkeys with her virus, and she was creating this little world, and this was named after her. It has her name on it,
Yeah.
And so that's one of the motifs I think that we can track as we go.
See, and I guess I took Gilgamesh in like a totally different direction.
Ooh, where'd you take it?
Because in Gilgamesh, the gods of Gilgamesh are the Anunnaki, and they are gods that come from the sky. And here we have.
Oh, so they are the gods.
We have literal gods coming from the sky.
Interesting. One of the other lessons in Gilgamesh, one of the main themes that runs through it, is that immortality is only for the gods. And Gilgamesh, because he loses his friend, he becomes afraid to die, and he goes on a quest for immortality, and everyone along the way tells him, just, quit fighting against this, enjoy your life, and enjoy pleasure, and just be aware that you'll die one day. And so I wonder if this quest for immortality is going to show up. We do see that in the sense that we're trying to preserve humanity by terraforming other planets so that humans can continue in some capacity to live. And this virus was intended for humans.
No, it wasn't, right? Like they don't. That's what's interesting. They don't use it on humans because nobody wants to know that's
monkeys,
right?
To
make
be
like some
human-like.
Yeah, like a slave class, right? Like they're trying to make. I mean,
that was a lie, though, wasn't it? I mean,
no.
Kern was just saying that they would be subservient to humans, so that people would be like,
maybe
okay about it. But she knew that they would become something more.
It's a very Planet of the Apes kind of situation that they're trying to do, right? So, let's what? Yes, we watched it together.
I might have slept through it, I think.
Okay.
Sorry.
But let's go back to the legacy thing, right? We also have, if we're gonna tie it into legacy, the genetic memory of the spiders is also like a legacy, right? So maybe a clash of two legacies or something like that, Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Peggy says she keeps calling everyone monkeys, but she was so bent on making monkeys the new reigning species.
Yeah.
I love that. Her calling the little ship with the monkeys the barrel of monkeys, and then she called themselves the barrel of monkeys. Yeah. Dr. Kern had a good sense of humor, like an ironic sense of humor about things. And she was so ambitious. I was just really immediately drawn into her character, and I'm so sad to see her like trapped inside of this AI,
So that was one of my things was so I mean that's what's happening, right? Whenever they are talking to Eliza is really the mind of Dr. Kern that she uploaded before she went to sleep, and it's just like gone insane, right? Like that's what that is, because you have like the real message, like how can I help you, and then it's like let me out, right? Because it didn't. It's not letting her wake up. Well, it's not doing the so Dr. Kern is still there. I know a Dr. Kern, so this is hard for me. Dr. Kern is still there, and they talk to her, right? When they say, we want to talk to Dr. Kern.
But she's like, why can't I open my eyes?
That's not Dr. Kern. That is Eliza. And that is the mind of Dr. Kern that she uploaded into the computer system. I think, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, before she went to sleep. And so it's this insane digital version of Dr. Kern, but it is not Dr. Kern.
I think real Dr. Kern is still asleep and can't wake up.
No, she's awake.
Oh.
She's awake. And so whenever they talk to Eliza, that is what the uploaded digital version of Dr. Kern's calling itself, but it has no body, it has no hands,
Right.
it can't wake up.
Okay.
And so like it is, imagine if you were like, I will upload myself into this computer, and then you got in there and you're like, what is this? What am I?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what's happening, but I'm not certain.
Okay.
Somebody will have to elaborate on
Well,
that.
I'm sure we'll learn more as we read.
I hope not. I'm kind of ready for the Eliza thing to be over, because they're just spinning their wheels, right? Just come on, guys. I mean, they made it to the planet, it looks like, so hopefully that's done. I want to make a comment about the old empire, and the way that they think of the current humans think of the old empire.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I find that kind of like an interesting idea, because it's something I've been thinking about a lot. I'm reading a book called I think it's called The Dawn of Humanity by David Graeber. It's a nonfiction, but it's sort of about how like the arc of history is a myth, and the idea that like and like we all fall prey to this, and we talk about it now because it's comforting, but it's that like there is this inevitability that things are just going to improve and improve and improve, and we will get somewhere, right? And his book's really more about like political institutions and how like we don't have to be the way we are, we can do anything. And you know, we had this society that got to this point where we were terraforming plants and everything, and then it fell apart, and then we had to like rebuild that, right? And then we're going to crash land on this planet, and it's going to fall apart because they're on a shuttle, and they're going to have to like make wooden houses and stuff, I guess, right, after they get down there. And so like I think it's interesting because we think of history as like this certain trajectory, right? Like we are just going to improve. And we think of the past as have always being worse than the present. But like we don't know that. And it may not be true everywhere. There have been false starts and resets. The Roman Empire, right? Julius Caesar and all that. That was a reset. Things were getting better, it fell apart, things got really bad, and then had to rebuild. And so I just kind of like that, right? Like there's no reason why this story has to have that aspect to it. But I think it's a good flavor.
Yeah. Peggy says, I don't think Kern's awake the human body. The mind is there, but can't really wake up. Thanks, Peggy.
Like somebody come out of the woodwork from my side.
Yeah. Without the or about the about what you were saying and the different civilizations of humans that we see going on between Kern and the people on the ship and stuff. It's interesting, that they have the classicist guy.
Yeah.
And he's who we get a lot of this information from, that like his group of humans doesn't know what happened to Kern's group of humans. And Kern's group of humans is further in the future than our group of humans. And we're like, right? It's in the future from us.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Sorry. And then to me, it's very hard to like imagine us losing track of our current history.
Oh, it is not hard for me at all.
I'm like, how everything is documented.
No.
And like,
so.
But I mean, I understand that that's not the case. I
Right.
understand that we can very easily lose track of our records and our history and all that. There's people that just did. We were talking about this the other day. Einstein's daughter, no one knows what happened to her.
Right.
How are you the daughter of the most, prolific scientist in modern history? And that wasn't even that long ago. And we don't know where she is or who she is now.
Well, I think I think I used to think like that. And then so at my office we have this computer that we use to analyze these certain kind of tests. And the last person who knew how to work that program left. And now we have this metal box. And nobody knows how to use it, and nobody can figure it out, and we can't turn it on, and we don't know the password, and even if we did know the password, no one knows how to use the software. It's some custom-made stuff. It doesn't make any sense. It's over. Like, it's over. And when that happened, I was like, oh, that's how this happens, right? Like, you bring your specialist or whatever, right? Like, what if Einstein had died before he finished doing all his math? Somebody would eventually figure it out.
Yeah.
But like we wouldn't know what he was doing.
Right, and he would be nothing to us.
Yeah. Or so like I think about like the current war between Russia and Ukraine, and Russia's really struggling, because they've literally forgotten how to do stuff, right? Like it's been so long since a major war like that, and they messed things up in Afghanistan too. But they don't remember how to like they've lost institutional knowledge on how to like supply things and do different things, and that's why like training is important and making sure that you share knowledge between people. That's why the understanding of all the spiders is so interesting. Is because you can't lose that kind of institutional knowledge. But anyway, that's just like a little anecdote for like I totally can buy that, right? Because when you have the one guy who doesn't know how to do it anymore.
But so this brings out an important point about most humans, and that's that we think that we're the best thing that there is.
Yeah.
And we think that we will be the civilization that evolves and that there will just be a better version of us. But that's not necessarily true. It could be a better version of anything. We're just us.
Yep.
And so we have these spiders who are almost as big as us, and I think like 3 meters or something like that. They're massive.
Yeah.
They were 3 meters before the dude went back to sleep, you know, and that was like, I don't know, so they're even bigger now probably. Yeah, so, but I really like that you brought up the understanding that the spiders will not forget their past.
They shouldn't be able to, right?
They maintain the legacy.
Right. The things that can cause the civilization to crash should not affect them, right? Like they might lose technology, but they should have the understanding somebody should
to rebuild it.
You have to destroy a whole line of Porsches.
Yeah.
You know, or whichever one was the scientist one, right? Because she theoretically has.
But even
sisters.
if you destroyed the whole line of Porsches, if her eggs are hatched,
right, then
it's patched.
Yeah. So it's a good system. Yeah, it's definitely a good system.
So cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I like also kind of thinking about how Three Body handled this problem of legacy, or this motif of legacy. You know, like we tried to make a museum of humans and you know all of that, and it all just
yeah. Well, that's I talk about this all the time. We like to think like, oh well, we are such a great civilization. Not me. I ain't the one, right?
Yeah.
People are like, we can go to the moon. We can't do anything. I'm not involved in that.
Yeah.
If the moon guys die, we ain't going to the moon because I'm not doing it. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the ants for a second and talk about talking about not Portia. What was the other one? Bianca. Bianca's like null scent is what they refer to it as. You know, and the idea that the ants it's a nothing, right? And it kind of takes me back to Three Body and like, could a null scent exist for us, right? Like something almost like in the two-dimensional or something that we just could not perceive. And so, you know, what all is out there that we can't detect because of the way that we sense things. And we have all these instruments that can do senses that we can't.
Like different light waves and stuff like that.
But and so we are taking the things that these instruments detect and we're reinterpreting them back into our senses. But they're not like that at all, right? Like, so I think of like an electron cloud. Like we're trying to take this thing and put it into a way that we can see it,
right?
Even though it's a thing that cannot be seen,
right?
And like, what could that? What is that really, right?
Yeah.
And if you had a different set of senses, what would that look like? And what would a race of aliens look like that had entirely different senses from us? You know, I think it's interesting. Or even like, you know, when we talked about this before, like what about something that's perceived time differently? You know? Because of it exists in slightly different dimensions than ours or something. I don't know.
So, okay, at the end of the part where we read, at the end of 3.8, has Bianca created an army out of these ants?
Yeah.
Has she duped them into...
So she mind wipes them.
Yeah.
And then reprograms them with her ants. Where they're just like, oh, okay, by the way, now you're... Right, because we've talked about this before, right? Like, if you existed in nothing, you cannot even like perceive yourself, right? Like you can't. Now, if you went from right here to nothing, you'd be like,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But if you only ever existed,
right?
On
but so these ants don't have a self,
right?
And so then when you wipe them, they are literally nothing. And then you go back and you give them a new world.
Purpose.
Well, so you give them a new world, which then gives them the ability, because you don't even have to give them a self, you know. And so these ants construct a new world for them, and then now they have this giant ant army. I can't wait to find out what
And
happens.
so was Portia uncomfortable with that?
I don't think so.
Okay, I read it right before going to sleep. Like I finished it, and so I wasn't sure what I dreamed and what I actually read.
I think she has an understanding that like the ants don't live in the same way she does.
Yeah.
But even if they did, I don't think she would care because they are the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they did, you know, like she seems to have some hang-ups about males. Like she thinks that there might be more to their life than is like accepted in their society. But she also doesn't seem to care that much.
She's like
she's interested.
Yeah.
But she's not gonna like do anything about it.
And she is the one that's smart enough to recognize though that there is more to the world than what she can sensorily take in. Yeah. You know, there's more than her legs and eyes can see.
Yeah. Hey, while we're talking about it with the senses and everything, I really enjoyed that their crystal and their priestess started picking up the conversation between the two satellites, and then that's why she's like dancing weird, is because there's new communications that they're not just the one that they're used to getting. That's really cool. That's really cool.
I'm not sure what was going on there.
New radio traffic.
I was close to going to sleep. All right. What else are you thinking?
I think that's about all I've really got for this week. It's a great setup. I really we ended in a great spot.
Always,
like,
yeah.
Always. We're really good at picking those. But yeah, I want to know what happens now. You know, the humans don't have much going for them. You know, they're going to show up with next to nothing.
A couple of pew 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 guns,
and now there's a united spider ant civilization.
Yeah, I mean they're way outnumbered.
Yeah,
and I'm not even rooting for the humans.
Well, I think they'll approach the humans and think they're gods. You know, like I think that's probably what will happen. So, you don't just have like your star come to the earth and then you just go kill them, right? You go talk to those guys.
I hope that the humans don't just start pew pew pewing the spiders.
I mean, how do they communicate? Communication is going to be a big problem. So we'll see. Peggy says, I found it hilarious when Portia described the males going back to the nest. Basically, they could get a job or become prostitutes. I mean, and you know, that's a true thing about spiders, right? It's like they will often eat the males and things like that. And males generally are more dispensable than females are. It'll be interesting to see if their society adapts to be more like egalitarian. I don't think there's like a need for that. Like I don't care. I don't think all alien civilizations need to be the way our civilization is. But it'll be interesting to see if they develop that sort of equality.
Peggy says, and then when Bianca described working with females and the measuring of legs, eggplant measuring contest, but it's the same.
Yeah.
Good job. I'm glad that didn't get blocked.
Yep.
Oh man. Okay, so any other thoughts on what's next? What are we gonna see here?
No, not really. I'm just kind of along for the ride on this one. You know? And there are more books in this series, and so those might be something we want to take a look at, depending. You know, let's give it another week and we'll see what's going on.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you have anything else?
No.
I have one more thing as we wrap up. So on this day in literary history, because we started that last week.
Did we? We also started the Gandalf show, and I forgot about it.
The Tale of Two Cities was published by Charles Dickens.
What year?
Oh, I don't remember. Sorry. But it was the best of times, and it was the worst of times, and it's a nice reminder that we're always living in, you know, a conflict, you know, where in some capacities it is the best of times, and in some capacities it is just the worst.
With COVID, it's the best of times, it's the worst of times.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's what I've got.
Okay. Just in wrapping it up, what is our reading for next week?
Our reading for next week
or for this week?
Chapters 3.9 through 5.7.
Cool.
So we'll meet you next Sunday at 10 a.m. Central.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. We'll see you guys next week.
Y'all have a great week and happy reading.
Bye. Oh no.